You're back at Beyond the Brand with Learn to RV. How many of you guys have been in a storm on travel day? The rain's coming sideways and everything is falling apart. So you pull over to the side of the road and you check your weather app and there's not supposed to be any rain there. Well, today we're joined by David Titley, the founder of RV Weather, and he's going to take us through all sorts of things about weather. But Dave is not just a weather guy. I mean, you were actually the Admiral of the United States Navy at one point, like doing weather for the whole country, correct?
Well, thanks, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on. I was the oceanographer and navigator of the Navy. So what that means in plain English is I was responsible for the United States Navy's weather and ocean prediction programs. And that included things like keeping aircraft carriers and typhoons apart from each other.
Wow. I mean, that's really awesome. You know, and you're such a humble guy. So, I mean, like, it was so funny when I learned that, you know, Frank actually came back and said, did you know he was an admiral? My husband's a retired Marine. So that meant a lot to him because he was on some of those aircraft carriers. But, you know, weather is always a threat to an RV. And so many people don't even think about it, or they think about it when they're in it. The other thing that you do is your travel timeline is included in that. And we're going to get into that. You run a mobile RV service business like we do. Weather is the difference between whether or not our teams are working. And so we use RV weather, but it did change how we operated. It's built for people that are actually on the road. Commuters can use it, but it's not just for commuters that are going back and forth to work every day. So if you're headed to a campground, this is a great way to get into it. So today, let's get into RV weather. Now, are you still in an Airstream?
So we do have an Airstream. Today we're at home. We did the snowbird thing this year for the very first time, and I can tell you probably better over a beer what it's like to hitch up and start driving in plus 6-degree temperatures. We took a chase vehicle down with us, and my wife says the very last of the snow came off the Airstream at the South Carolina border. We started in central Pennsylvania. We spent the last half of the winter and early spring in Georgia, but we're back in central Pennsylvania now.
Now, are you up there for the whole summer?
We have a couple rallies, so we'll be going to the Big Escapees rally in Maine in June. We'll be going to the Airstream International rally in North Dakota, Minot, in August. Open Roads has their first rally ever in November. We'll be going to that in Pigeon Forge, and we'll see what else falls into the schedule.
That's awesome. Now, you have one of the most decorated careers in American history, probably. But you ended up building a service for RVers. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. And I think a lot of people in the RV community can relate to this is, you know, we're all sort of products of our past lives, if you will. A lot of us either we had businesses, we were professionals, we worked in corporations, and all of us at some point kind of decided, you know, I'm going to go do something else. Or maybe still do this in addition to the working life there. So my background is kind of alluded. I did 32 years in the U.S. Navy. Most of that time for the first 10 years I was on ships, and much of my time I was in the meteorology, oceanography community. I knew since about kindergarten I was going to do something with weather. If my mom was still alive, she would have told you I hatched as a meteorologist. I did weather for a long time in the Navy. For a little while after the Navy as NOAA's chief operating officer. So actually the head of the U.S. Weather Service was one of my direct reports. Penn State then made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And so I ended up teaching in the Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Sciences for a few years. But like a lot of us, I got to be about 60, give or take, years old. And, you know, I was pretty convinced that while we're all going to die, I did not want to die behind a desk doing a PowerPoint slide. So told my boss, you know, this has been great, but, you know, time to move on. And what we really wanted to do was actually work in Grand Teton National Park as volunteers. It's a lot easier unless you live in the area in Jackson, Wyoming. And if you can afford it, more power to you. We can't. You know, the houses start at about $2 million there, and that's for a closet. So we knew we weren't going to be buying there. But if you bring your own house with you, as in an RV, things become much, much more practical, if you will. So that led us to the RV world. We ended up with an Airstream, and I hadn't towed, really hadn't even camped in decades. I mean, we knew nothing. And when I look back, I mean, we were scared. I was scared when we first started this. I should have been a lot more scared than I was. But we figured it out, right? Oh, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
And we we figured out. But one of the things, of course, you learn from firsthand is just how much more weather sensitive, towing. So we've got a 30-foot trailer. It's certainly not the largest on the road, but it's not the smallest. 30-foot trailer, 10,000 pounds, 10,000-pound truck. So we're 53 feet length in total. And you really start knowing, like when you're going across 80 and you have 40, 45-mile-an-hour crosswinds, you feel it. You know about that. And you watch the trucks. Now you're really watching the trucks because you're wider, right? And you're watching the trucks sort of crabbing down the road and wondering whose lane they're really going to use, whether it's their lane or your lane. So you just become much more sensitive. We ended up towing a little bit in the snow in Yellowstone National Park. That was an experience that I don't
Which
really
can
need to do
happen.
again.
And so many people don't realize
And
that can happen.
yeah, up at the higher elevations where we were for a little bit. So we've sort of done a lot of these things. Of course, avoiding severe weather, Airstream's aluminum and hailstorms do not really mix well. Usually the hail wins, so we work pretty hard to keep ourselves away from that. So we learned firsthand. Two, like everybody, of course, we're on social media. There's affinity groups. I'm in an Airstream group. I actually ended up as one of the administrators for Airstream Addicts. It's about 86,000 people, give or take. And people, of course, figure out, oh, you're a weather guy and this. And then one, and then two, and then three people say, well, I'm going from, point A to point B. Can you help me out? And as I mentioned in the Navy, one of the things we do is we have a program in the Navy called Optimum Track Ship Routing, OTSR for short. What that really means is we're going to keep ships out of bad weather. Since I can't move the storm, I move the ship, or I delay the ship, or I tell it to go somewhere around. So I really just took what we had done with the Navy, applied it to RVs. And I probably did between about the year 2020 and maybe 2022, 2023, I routed 400 RVs, not just Airstreams. I mean, fifth wheels, Class A, vans, you name it, pretty much any RV. And people would find out about this. And the price was right. It was free. I did it, but I was doing it by hand. One, this starts taking up a lot of time. And two, this is, a great 1970s kind of business model in which I'm sitting there and looking at a lot of weather charts and roadmaps and this and that and putting it together. It worked. And one of the things that came out of that is I learned not only about my personal weather limits, but I learned about hundreds of people's weather limits for RVers. And there's certainly a spectrum, but you get a pretty good feel for what people are okay in, what makes them uncomfortable, and what is like just no go, right? We had that. So I sort of had this vision of like, well, why can't we take all the weather, rain, snow, thunderstorms, visibility, winds, wind gusts, and kind of put it into an impact level? And I made up a scale, basically 1 to 5, and you could, made it yellow through dark red. We know that we don't want to be in bad weather. Well, what kind of bad weather? Well, I just don't want bad weather, right? Don't confuse me with the details. Just keep me out of bad weather. So we were able to first build a system that would take all the different kinds of weather and basically come up with what we called a performance surface, if you will. It was basically a weather impact surface, and we built that out to 8 days. But then it's like, well, how can I route people to avoid the weather they don't want to be in? So you mentioned at the beginning of the show, like it's really bad weather and you pull off and you're trying to do superhuman things.
We actually had that happen. So let me just pull you into that. So, about a year and a half ago, we were leaving Texas and there were bad storms forecasted, but we thought we could avoid them, so we left. Back then, I had a chase vehicle, so we had a minivan and the truck and trailer. And Frank drove the truck and trailer with one of our kids. And so they were in it. They called me and they said, hey, we've got some swirling trees. We're going to keep going. We can't see in front of us. We're starting to get some hail. I knew because there were tornadoes in our path that they were probably knee deep in it. Well, then I drive into it, and I'm probably only a couple miles behind them. But me, being me, with all the kids in the van, I am in the back going, all right, let's find some place to pull off. We're on the back roads in Texas. And so I find a little tiny convenience store, go up under their awning and hang tight. Their building is brick. And I feel like, okay, but then I'm watching on the app we have to track each other. He's getting further away, and the trees are swirling way worse around me. And so that was the day I wish I'd had RV weather. You're trying to get out of the storm before it hits, whatever that looks like. Your origin story, started it just to do something. Like it wasn't like a business back then. At what point did you realize that it was a business for you?
Yeah, that's a It's a great question, Jennifer. And really, how that transitioned was, as I said, I sort of had this vision of like, how can we do like what the Navy does, keep people out of bad weather, but how can we do it automatically? And how can we make it so that really anybody who has one of these things, or a laptop or a tablet, how could they do this by themselves? Because I'm only one person. I'm 60 something years old. I am not going to go and hire an office and 40 people to, be like Bartleby the Scrivener and do this. That's a 1970s business model. We're not going to do that. So how can we do this? So I'm on the phone with, and I tell when I talk to students, this is my relationships count story here. So I'm talking to a good shipmate of mine, good friend of mine, guy named Van Gurley. I met him in the early 90s. He was a lieutenant. I was a lieutenant commander. He's probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life, Navy or not. We end up working together, or he works for me in various places. He ends up being my chief of staff and my deputy when I'm a 2-star admiral in the Pentagon.
Neat.
Van
It's actually funny. People don't realize how tight that military community is, and the longer you stay in it, the more times you circle back with the people you started with.
Oh, yeah. And especially naval oceanography is pretty small to begin with, so you know everybody. It's almost like high school. Van, by this point, he started as an analyst. He's now become chief executive officer, CEO of a pretty significant Beltway high-tech defense firm out for anybody who knows Northern Virginia, they're based out in Reston, Virginia. And his firm, it's called Metron, it really goes and finds 50-pound brains, applied mathematicians, software engineers, physicists, people like this. So Van and I, we're just having a phone call. We're just catching up. And I mentioned, hey, I'm doing this RV weather thing. It's kind of a hobby. I'd love to be able to do routing. Turns out the week before, Van had a board meeting, and his board had said, if we could like civilianize some of the things that we're doing, that would be pretty cool. We would expand our markets. So Van is thinking, we know how to do routing because we do routing for the Department of Defense and other agencies. I knew what we would route around. We would route around that performance surface where we show high impact weather. We don't want to be in it, right? But that weather's moving, you're moving, weather's evolving, you're moving. How do we do all this? Well, by the way, unlike ships, we tend to stop at night, right? We don't just keep driving 24/7.
That's true. I hadn't even considered that the ships didn't stop.
Ships don't stop. Ships don't have to stay on Interstate 80. So we have some other constraints in the RV world that we don't have in the maritime world. But fundamentally, the problem's not all that different. But nobody has automated this. I had a pretty good idea of how to do the weather piece. I did not know how to put the routing piece onto something that would work for everybody. Metron did. So we formed a company, RV Weather Enterprises. I took RV Weather, we made it into RV Weather Enterprises, co-founded with Metron. And what we then built was what you now see if anybody goes to rvweather.com and runs SureRoute. That is what we built. So we have now taken basically the same tenets, the same concepts of what the Navy does to keep ships in bad weather from each other. We now can do that for RVers. So you tell me where you're starting from, where you're going to, how many hours you like to be on the road, towing speed, your rig height, so we give you an RV safe route. But then the thing that we do that no other app does is I ask you, tell me your weather limit. Basically, tell me how much weather you're gonna be okay with. And I'm not your mother, so I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but we do default to slight. And what I have found when I did all those routings manually, slight, there's a whole definition, but for the podcast, let's say it's basically wind gust up to but not higher than 30 miles an hour. Okay. Most RVers, it's like, yeah, we know it's windy, we know it's getting breezy out there, but most of us is like, yeah, we're okay with that. Not the perfect day, but it's okay. So that is the default weather, but you can set it higher. You can even set it lower. It's up to you. And then you press run, and within about 1-2 minutes or so, you are going to get a route that will get you from your start point to your end point. It will optimize that route to get you to your end as quickly as possible within the constraints and avoid the weather that you don't want to be in. And that's how this works. So Van's team, the Metron team, they had, again, the software engineers, and they understood like how to do that. I had, it's like that cartoon, right? Here's my great idea I wrote on a sticky. You guys go and do it now. It
I
was sort of
understand
like
this.
that.
My whole
Sort of
team
like
like
that.
rolls their eyes at me. So
Yeah, here's a great idea, right?
yeah,
So
that's awesome.
so anyways, but that's how we've done it. We do some other things. We still have a daily forecast. You can find the daily forecast on our website. That's actually free to everybody. That's
Oh,
just
that's
out
awesome.
there. But if you want the routing, we've got some ways you can try it out for a couple days, and then of course, it's a subscription service if you want to
Sure. And we'll get into
do
that.
this. Yeah, but
So let's
that's how
talk
it
about the
works.
actual problem. Let's talk
Yeah.
about, a lot of our viewers walk around thinking that their phone's weather app is the chef's kiss. And,
Hmm.
we are the weirdos. So we actually Frank has, I don't know, 5, 6 weather apps installed because we also track weather for our teams across the country
Sure.
with RV roofing solutions. But there's a fundamental something that every standard weather app is missing. If you were to define that one thing, what would you say is missing that you have?
Yeah. So the one real difference is, well, there are two. There are two main
Good.
differences. The first main difference is we integrate all the different kinds of weather to give you one weather impact. So you don't have to go scroll through, well, let me look at rain. Let me look at winds. Is there going to be any freezing rain? Is there going to be any big thunderstorms? Is there going to be wind gusts? And a lot of the apps, and I've got them all too. I mean, I use them, for basic weather forecasts. That's what I need.
So, I mean, Frank actually looked into being a balloon pilot at one point, and I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure it's not still on his radar. But the reality is we've done everything. We've chased balloons. We've done all of
Hmm.
it. So I think we probably have every app out there.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
on a windy day, we're going to windy.com. We're not
Sure.
going to,
Yeah.
weather.com. I mean, we're not going to, the NOAA is the most accurate if you don't have a subscription service like ours, we find personally. But Weather Underground is always one of those things where, you find
Yeah.
different things where people are learning something totally and Weather Underground can say something totally different than, I don't know, pick an app. There's lots of them out there, but I feel like yours is so concise. That's one of the things that makes it so different. Yeah. It's not just it's going to rain at my destination. It's the entire travel day.
I mean, and that's the thing. So we give you the travel day, but what we also do, which as best we can tell, nobody else does, is we will give you a route to keep you out of the bad weather. So this is where I tell people, rather than using your incredible RV driving skills when you're in the middle of the storm to try to extricate yourself, use your incredible RV judgment to keep yourself from being in that position in the first place, right? I mean, and that's how pilots talk about this. Use your judgment so you don't have to use all those superior aviation skills there, right? Keep yourself out of getting into what we would call in extremis, right? You don't want to put yourself there. So I am not going to route you intentionally through an area of high chance of tornadoes or hail or straight line winds from severe weather. Now, can I tell you days in advance where those storm cells are going to be? Of course not. And nobody can. And anybody who says they can, put your hand on your wallet and slowly back away, because nobody has that kind of skill, whether they say so or not. But we can tell you there's a high potential, today, right now, there's a high potential Northeast Texas, Oklahoma, up into Missouri in the afternoon that, there's going to be some significant cells. You'll probably see, a tornado watch come out mid-afternoon, and then you're going to have to start watching if you're in there. So I tell people, like, if you are in there, and do exactly what you did when you're in the chase vehicle. I don't care what building you find a building, because that building is better than your RV.
100%.
Even if it's a little convenience store, it can be a bathhouse. It can be a rest area on the freeway. It can be a Love's. It can be a Walmart. It can be a McDonald's. I don't care. And they won't either. If there's a real storm, nobody's going to throw you out. Just park your rig somewhere. And if you're in that warning, in what we call in the polygon, be safe for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Worst case is if your rig goes, that's what insurance is for. I hope not, but you will be safe, right? Whereas if you're in the rig, it can be really bad.
A couple of years ago, we were actually right here where we are this week. We are in Conroe, Texas, and there's a lake literally like less than a quarter mile from my RV right now. A cell came across the water, and there's actually pictures from that storm from several years back. It lifted my RV, and we were in it. as it happened.
Ooh.
Our awning, we were pulling it in. We had some inflatable kayaks that we were securing at the same time. The rain was coming sideways, but we felt it go boom. And at that point, everybody was like, let's go to the bathhouse. It was really that fast, that simple. Like you just grabbed your favorite pet and you left. Like nobody cared that we were in there with our dogs. Nobody cared. And we stayed in the showers. Like, our family, we have 7 children. 6 still traveled with us at that point. No, 5. 5 plus 2 is still 7. And so we're in there with our dogs. We were all in the women's bathroom together because nobody wanted to separate at that point. Everybody else was filtering in, and we were just like, come on in, come on in.
Nobody cared. Yep.
So like there were 40 people in this bathhouse, but it was safer than our RV. And we didn't know what that storm was going to do. And so we're here in Texas again this week during that storm cell. Hopefully we're in good shape this week. But people check the storms. Nobody checks for crosswinds. Most people don't check for crosswinds. And while they're white knuckling at 60 miles an hour, I remember a time, we're going to dive into wind a little bit on the road. And I know you briefly discussed it, but we were hitting a storm cell as we were coming across Texas. And it wasn't your average storm cell. There was no rain, but it was windy. And all of a sudden there was this brown cloud coming at us. And so we did an episode on weather. And I said, yeah, we were driving into a haboob. And she was like, a what? I'm like, yeah, well, I'm like, this brown wall. I said, and we lived out in Southern California for a bunch of years, courtesy of the Marine Corps. And so we saw a lot of windstorms. Palm Springs doesn't get the rain, but it certainly gets the wind. And so a brownout is a very common problem. Well, so that day in the chase vehicle, I lost Frank, not because he was miles ahead of me, but because that wind wall just showed up and it was brown. So flashers on. Now we're looking we weren't stopping right here, but now we're stopping right here because that's just smart math. And so we actually waited it out almost a day and a half. We pulled in, waited a whole day. The wind was running 40 miles sustained, which meant that the crosswinds were even worse. But the forecast says that winds are 15 miles an hour, but you're in New Mexico or West Texas. What does that look like if you're even just flat towing on a highway?
Yes, we actually, I look at gusts because the gusts are what you're going to feel. So if you look at RV weather, it's really calibrated for wind gusts. So as we kind of mentioned, if the wind gusts are less than 20 miles an hour, you're not going to see any color on the map. If they're 20 to 30, you see light yellow, 30 to 40, you see orange, 40 to 55, it's dark orange, 55 to 75, it's red. And then after that, it's hurricane force, and it's like this really ugly, dark purpley color that you don't want to be in. So we calibrate for gusts. You can turn on, we've got an icon, you can turn it on, and you'll see it's very windy-like in the sense that we show kind of the flow of the wind. So it's real obvious if you're on I-10 or I-40 or, I-15 or 25, whether that's a crosswind or head or tailwind. And you got to watch out for the dust storms. And the Weather Service is pretty good about putting those out. They'll put out either a dust storm warning. So I have on RV weather, if you go all the way down to the bottom on the top right, you can select NWS alerts, National Weather Service alerts. And if you put them on, those update every minute. They are just continuously updating. And I actually have things like snow squall warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, flash flood warnings, dust storm warnings. They will flash. They will actually flash to kind of get your attention, if you will. And you can just mouse over, you can click on it or use your, tap on it if you're on a phone, and you can read exactly what the Weather Service has put out for that location. They're pretty good about getting those dust storms. And I'm sure you've seen these, Jennifer. I mean, if you go on I-10, I-8, I-10 out in Arizona and New Mexico, there are actually signs on the interstate. They tell you exactly what to do. And it's basically get as far off the road as you can, turn off all your lights, get your foot off the brake, basically be invisible, because some idiot otherwise is going to see your lights and think you're on the road, and they're going to run right into you. And you talk to any trooper out there, and they've all got stories of, yep, they ran right into them. So yeah, but you got to get off the road. You got to get off as far as you can. But if you're into those things, the winds are up there. So you're probably, on RV weather, you would see that you're probably at least orange, probably dark orange, maybe even red. So if you're using kind of I only want slight weather, we're going to give you a route. It's rather than like remembering what to do in the dust storm. It's like, I'd prefer to keep you out of those situations. to begin with. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it does. And then the bridge and the overpass clearance piece, let's
Hmm.
go back to that just for a second, because RV
Hmm.
weather factors those dimensions for your
Yeah.
RV in to your routing. And that's not a weather feature, it's a
No.
full travel intelligence feature. So when did that become part of your equation?
It was very early on. It was probably the very first upgrade we did after we launched the routing. It was based on customer feedback. This routing thing's nice, but I don't want you to route me around a storm just to route me under a low bridge. You can't do that. And it's like, yeah, that's a pretty good point. Basically, built in, there is, believe it or not, there is a service, there's a couple services that's what they do. They go and figure out in the United States of America, really North America, all the clearances for underpasses and bridges and stuff like this. And I've actually had people, when I've looked at routes, I mean, 999 routes out of 1,000 run just fine. But every once in a while, I'll see somebody's route doesn't run. And I've had a couple of them, and it's like they wanted to get to a certain point, and you had to get under a low bridge to get there. And they had put in my rig is 13 foot or 13.6 or whatever. And it's like, that bridge is 1210. At least that's what it's measured as.
Right.
So I tell people, assuming that your data is right, that you're really 13 or 13.6 or whatever, I tell people it's only a mile down from the campground. I would call the campground and double, triple, quadruple check. But that's why, my system it's trying to keep you out from being under a bridge that you really shouldn't be
100%.
going under there.
It's
So then you
funny.
need trusted local knowledge to verify.
Yeah, we do probably 2 to 4 roofs a year that for people that have hit a bridge. And so it's not uncommon. And if we do 2 to 4, there's other companies doing a lot more than
Oh, yeah.
that. I love that it can tell you whether or not your rig can safely navigate not just the weather window, but it's a totally different product category to say, okay, you can't go under this bridge because I don't know. We have a lot of tools. Frank and I use a lot of tools, and the accuracy of RV weather is different. It just is different. And we've been using it 4 months now,
Okay,
regularly, like on
Yeah.
a regular basis. So
Yeah.
it's real meteorologists behind the screen. It's not just an algorithm. It's not just some kind of AI bot doing it for you. Obviously, you're an actual credentialed human being reviewing data. And so it's what lands in our inbox when we go to hit the route. So let's get into roofing a little bit because it is personal for us. Been doing RV roofing for 13 years now. Before RV weather, we were doing what everybody else did. We were tracking 7 different apps, checking whatever app, hoping it was for the best. Our technicians would carry 1 or 2 apps. Frank would check the weather for all of them because they don't track the weather like he does. If we have a roof wide open and there's a rainstorm coming in, we need to know because we need to not open that roof, period. But it costs real money if we don't, if that makes sense. So for a service business or a mobile unit like RV techs working outdoors on whatever, is RV weather, what is it giving us that, we weren't getting from our standard tools? I mean, I know the answer, but I'd like you to tell me.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm cautious on this. This is a little bit of promise and over deliver perhaps. In the first 36 to 48 hours, what we do is we're still taking what they call, it's really a consensus. It's really, I'm taking up to 71 different weather models and we're putting them together. And when I say
Wow, that's a lot of
really,
weather models.
yeah, it's really the National Weather Service that is
Okay.
doing this. There's something, this is like, hey, put on your real thick glasses here. This is weather geeky stuff. But there is something called the National Blend of Models. And it's really the international blend of models, but international doesn't sell as well with the Congress, so NOAA calls it the national blend of models. And what this came out of was actually from Hurricane Sandy. So for people who remember back, this is 2012, Superstorm Sandy went into New Jersey. It did this famous left hook into the coast. And this is really the first time, I would say, in the popular culture that people even realize there is a European weather model and a US weather model, and they don't always agree. And in this one, in general, the European, it called the landfall into New Jersey, and the US one didn't. So everybody's screaming up and down, you got to, do better, blah, blah, blah. NOAA, after Sandy, actually got some money. And what the then head of the Weather Service did, and I thought it was brilliant on his part, was like, we're not just going to take the European, we're not just going to take the US, we're going to take all of these. And as I said, it's up to, over 170 models. And we're going to mix them up, okay? And we're going to, the ones that do well, we're going to weight more than the ones that don't do quite as well. But I tell people, I think a number of your listeners would understand this. If you've got Fidelity or Vanguard especially, like index investing. Yes, if we had all picked Apple and Starbucks and Microsoft 30 years ago, none of us would probably be here right now, right? Because we have our own whatever, our own country. But we didn't. How do you know? Well, you don't. But if you can buy this index, you'll probably do pretty well. Actually, usually better than just picking individual ones. So I tell people that the national blend of models, this is the weather version of index investing. You can, from time to time, find a model that does better, but the blend rarely has a bad day. The other thing it does, because remember, I'm not trying to just tell you the weather, I'm trying to give you a route to keep you out of bad weather. I need not only accuracy, but the other thing I need? Stability, right? I cannot have a system that says, hey, Jennifer, you guys need to be on I-90. And then 12 hours later, no, I meant I-70. No, I-40. No, I-80. If I was doing that, if these recommendations are bouncing all around, I mean, you guys are going to find the cancel button real fast. So it has to be right, but it also has to be something that as it updates, and it updates every hour, that you can get a stable solution, something that says, no, I mean I-90, I really mean I-90. The bad weather's going to stay. Nebraska, whatever, you're going to be okay if you get that far north going across the country. So that's what we do. You can use this very near term. You will see, if you just turn on rain or turn on snow, you will see a lot of structure. I call it structured. You'll see, and it's pretty good. But I also, if I'm in your business, I'm going to have a good radar app as well. And I'm going to let the techs, either you have a central command place or you train the techs enough so that they know what they're looking at on that radar app. I use WeatherTap. I'm not sponsored by them. I don't have any affiliate relationship with them. It's just what I've used for 10 years. It works pretty well. There are certainly other equally good radar apps out there. So like if I'm looking at that 0 to 2 hour kind of time frame, I'll probably look at a radar app. But once I get beyond there, you can look at the impacts. But again, remember, RV weather is tuned for driving impacts. So in fact, I say that, we're really not a weather app. We're a decision application, right? We're a decision application to help you either plan your route, evaluate your route, or I'll give you a route. I'll give you a recommendation. So it's the cliche, right? Everybody talks about the weather. Nobody does anything. We've all heard that. We're going to do something. We're going to actually tell you what to do to keep you out of the weather you don't want to be in.
All right, let's talk about actual mechanics of RV weather. And I know we're running long, and stick with us because this is just such great content. Honestly, not everybody tracks weather the way Dave tracks weather. And this is your passion project, I would say, turned into a business. But at the same time, nobody's doing it quite like you're doing it. So let's talk about weather apps. So somebody pulling data from 3 sources, they put a nice interface on it. RV weather is not just that. So under the hood, let's talk about Wilma.
Okay. So Wilma is a term that I used to use. I actually don't.
Oh, I love how you lit up, by the way.
And that's okay. It's sort of a fun term. Anybody who's made it this far through the podcast has probably figured out that I did a lot of things in my life, but entrepreneur and starting a small business until very recently was not one of them. So one of the many things I learned stuff every day, is don't use terms that confuse your customers. And so I had this cute saying, Wilma, and it stood for weather impacts likely to make an appearance. We use it internally now within our software teams and our own marketing teams, but I usually just call it weather impacts now because everybody understands weather impacts. But Wilma was really that first, you can almost think of like a pyramid. So the very first layer of the pyramid, think of your weather models. And this is what on most of the free apps you can find. You can either find, a forecast that's coming out of some kind of weather model. Some of the apps tell you which model it is. Others you don't even really know. It's just some sort of forecast. And some of the geekier ones let you look at, a whole bunch of lines and moving stuff and whatever. That's your weather model. the next layer up is, what does this mean? You could almost call it this performance surface or this impact surface. That would be this so-called Wilma. This is where we have integrated those 7 different kinds of weather and put them on this unified scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is slight impacts, 5 is like nobody should be there, like hurricane, tornado, blizzard, that kind of stuff. And we go out to 8 days. And I go out to 8 days really for the reasons we talked about before, is I have a stable solution, pretty accurate, but also stable out to 8 days. So you can animate this. And actually, in the very beginning of RV weather, that's all we had, was we just had these weather impacts, and you could look at that and you know where you're going. And it's like, oh, I see all these colors. Let's not go there. And then the third part now is the routing piece that goes on top of this. So that routing engine will, again, as we've talked about, get you from point A to point B and avoid those colors, avoid the things that you don't want to
Right.
drive in. But yeah, Wilma was really the first instance or iteration of combining all that different weather stuff, which is usually, that's what you get on the free apps. You get all the different weather stuffs, but you have to go and look at 7 places and 7 times and 7 icons and put it together. And I'm not saying people can't do that, but it's a lot of time. You're not, you're just never quite sure. So if nothing else, we save you a lot of time. And by using the national blend of models, we know we're going to be pretty good. And because that's really taking not only whatever you saw on your app of choice, but it's taking 170 other solutions as well and putting it all together.
That's fascinating. So for somebody that's not a weather geek like me, because I'm not a weather
Normal
geek,
people.
Frank is.
Normal people.
My understanding is it translates that raw atmospheric data into something that you can actually use and understand.
That is the goal. Exactly, Jennifer. It's the idea that you can take all this stuff and it will go from 1 to 5. The other thing we do have on that weather impact surface is, probably you've heard of, I mean, it's pretty common in the RV community, chasing 70 degrees. Where is it nice? I mean, and this is the thing, right? We always talk about bad stuff and hurricanes and tornadoes, and the weather geeks love it. But it's like, I don't want that. I want to know where it's nice. And we actually have on our weather impacts graphic out through 8 days, we will shade in like a sky blue color places where it's light winds, it's nice temperatures, there's not much humidity, it's no thunderstorms, no wind, no rain, some sun, pretty good visibility. So it's like, I tell people, like, whomever sold you your RV, this is what they promised every day was going to be like. Of course, they lied, but you can find that. And I actually have clients. I have clients who, they're not even really using RV weather for routing. They are looking for where sustained areas of this good weather are. And it's like, we're going to go to, whether it's Arizona or South Texas or Georgia or wherever it is. Maybe in the summer it's Minnesota or Wisconsin. And we're going to hang out there for a week or so because it looks like it's going to be decent weather. And we can do it because we have that freedom to do so.
That's awesome. So let's talk some real world weather scenarios. Scenario 1, you're a full timer. It's moving day. It's non-negotiable. We have to get to point B by day 2. Maybe I'm, a snowbird and I'm coming back for the summer season, wherever home is. There's no flexibility on that timing because our lease just ended today. So how does RV weather change how they approach that morning?
So what I would look at is, I would have started running this maybe 3, 4, 5 days before it's like moving day. So you can quickly see, do I have an issue or not? And a lot of times you don't have an issue, but now you know. Okay, because you got a lot of stuff, right? We get to the end of an extended stay, and there's just always stuff, right? You gotta deal with. Do you have enough propane? Do we pay the bills? If we picked up all the stuff, is the inspection. I mean, right? There's just stuff you got to do.
Well, we ran into that coming into Sedalia. This was almost my real world situation coming into Sedalia. We actually left a day early, knowing that we were going to hit storm cells in Florida. We stayed in North Florida, knowing that we were going to come up through Florida, and we still hit the storm cells.
Yeah. But you kind of answered my question right there. Or the reason I would say you start looking at this 3, 4, maybe even 5 days before, because yes, I cannot stay maybe past the 31st of the month, but I could leave a day early.
This is true.
And,
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
If I can leave a day early, then if I can get north or east or west or whatever of the system, Now I've got options, right? So you try not to put yourself in that box. And sometimes, sometimes it's hard. It's easier to do that than others. I mean, I talk about this, and sometimes it's like, I'm just going to leave on this day anyways. And I do that as well. At the
Well,
very
you said it
least,
first. You're not our mom, so there's that.
yep. At the very least, though, you know in advance what you're gonna get into. So let's say it's a severe thunderstorm scattered. Like today, there's going to be, it's not going to be a huge outbreak today, but there'll be a few. So it's like, well, it's a real pain in the where if I go and delay a day or even leave a day early because I'm in the real world, I've got obligations, I've got whatever, doesn't matter. So I'm going to have to do it. But if I know in advance, okay, well, are the batteries in my NOAA weather radio, are they actually charged? Is this thing going to make that god awful noise alert thing if there's something near me? I know what radar app. Maybe I've looked at the route and I've kind of know, okay, within maybe there's a 20-mile stretch in which there's really not a good bailout place. But once I get beyond there, there's rest areas and McDonald's, and there's enough exits that I can, within a couple miles, I can get myself off the freeway. So I know before I get to that sort of longer stretch, I'm going to ask my partner, my driving partner, or if I had to pull off, I'm going to look at the radar and just make sure, okay, I'm good for 20 minutes. Now if it was a great day, I'm not going to worry about that because I already know it's a great day. So I'm not telling people you can't go if it's yellow or orange or whatever, but you sort of armed with that knowledge. And again, we're all adults and we've decided we're going to drive through this. But you can take some of these precautions so it's not like, oh my God, where did this come from? I had no
Right.
idea. And now it's like, danger, Will Robinson, and you're sort of in this, I don't want to say panic, but it's like now you're really into improvisation. And I mean, we've all been there, right? The pressure goes up, the tension goes up.
You say things you shouldn't say.
Yeah,
I
yes, I'm
told you not
sorry.
to
I'm
go
sorry
today.
for what I said. Yes, when we hit the storm,
Well,
something
let's
like
go.
that. I'm sure there's a t-shirt. Yeah.
Well, let's go west a little bit because we've kind of stayed mostly on the East Coast talking about weather.
Mm-hmm.
But let's
Mm-hmm.
just say next scenario is there's a family, they're headed to Disney, but they're headed to Disney from, let's say, Iowa. Then they've
Mm-hmm.
decided that they want to go to California Disney, but they're going to hit some weather on the way.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people to enjoy the journey and to slow down. But, maybe they only have 2 weeks worth of vacation. And so the first 3 days are driving, a week at Disney, and then they've got to get home. And they're planning more stops on the way back than they are going. How would you tell that family to use RV weather?
So again, I would say start looking at this, 3, 4 days at least before you start going. You can see, and again, we have something called Check My Route. You can actually, if you've already got a bunch of your reservations laid out, and a lot of people do this, maybe you put your trip in Trip Wizard, maybe you put it in Adventure Genie, you put it in. Maybe just use Google Maps. I mean, I'm not smart enough to use these other apps, so I just go and use Google Maps. And I figured out my campgrounds or my harvest host, and I've got, I kind of know where I'm staying already. So it's like, Titley, I don't really want you to give me a route because I know my route. So you can set up an RV weather at the very top. You can either choose new route or you can click on the block called Check My Route. And you can put in where you're stopping, and we're just going to drive you sort of that shortest RV safe route from point to point to point. Okay.
Oh,
And
that's really neat.
yeah. And you go click on that. And what you then get is you're going to get a line just like it looks in Google, except it's color coded and it's color coded with the weather impact. So you can look at that super quick. And if it's like either that sky blue, perfect weather, or no color, which is absolutely fine, or even the light yellow, which is slight impacts, I would say you're good to go. Or you can see, well, do I have any of the orange? Well, I do, but it's only for 15 minutes. It's probably a shower. I'll deal with that when the time comes. Or do I see, oh my God, when I get to Arizona, the whole thing is dark orange. It's like, ooh, okay. So you can then click on Show Me Options, or you can play with this manually. But Show Me Options, let's say you don't have a lot of time. One of the options I'll look at is maybe you need to drive longer. Maybe if it's winds, and it's probably winds at this time of year in Arizona or New Mexico, those winds tend to come up around lunchtime, blow like you know what until just after dinner, and then they come down. So if I get an dark 30 start and I can be basically just about finished with my day's drive by lunchtime or very early afternoon, I will have minimized my time in those winds. And you can use some time shifting to try that. And yeah, and so you can basically use, you have time and you have space. And those are the two things that, you can kind of control. And what time it is. Maybe I can get there a day later. Maybe I can't. Maybe I can leave a day earlier. Maybe I can't. But sometimes you can drive longer. We've all done that, right? Okay, we're just going to have to power through, and we're going to have to do maybe 150 more miles than we really like doing. But that gets us on the other side of the storm or ahead of the storm, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So you can, yeah, or you start early. I've done that
yeah.
a lot of times, given people recommendations for you're going to hate me, but if you get on the road by 5 a.m. and you can drive till noon, you're going to be okay.
You're
And because
right.
the bad weather comes.
I
Yeah.
would hate it. I would hate
Well,
that
that's the thing. And
recommendation.
some people, I've had people do that, and I've had other people saying, no way,
I'll just
I'm
wait 2
sorry,
more
we're not
days. I'm
doing
good.
that. Yeah, we're going to just stay here until it all goes. And that's fine too. It's
A lot of
totally your
lot
choice.
of our listeners are solo RVers,
Hmm.
solo women specifically.
Hmm.
And so let's just say we're a solo woman driving a 30-foot Airstream like you do.
Hmm.
They can't walk the perimeter in a storm. They don't have a co-pilot. How would she navigate the weather differently?
Yeah, what I recommend to really anybody, and I'll just say that in general, and I hate to stereotype, but in general, I think solo travelers and especially solo female travelers just think about all the risks a little bit more seriously than like guys do. And again, that may sound horrible or whatever, but I think in general, that's kind of true. Women just sort of, if they're by themselves, they'll just think about this because they probably planned campgrounds that they know or they have pretty good confidence are safe. They've looked it up. The reviews are good. There's no weird things going on. So they want to make sure they can get there because if you can't get there, now your whole plans are kind of
Right.
thrown out. So in this case, I really do recommend that before you start, a component of being safe is looking at what kind of weather you're going to have on your route. Again, we can either days before, we can give you a route to keep you out of the weather that you don't want to be in. We can evaluate the route that you are on. It's not like, oh my God, the tornadoes are around me. What do I do? It's like, we need to keep you out of that situation to begin with. And that's what we do. But I've found I've got quite a few solo female travelers as current subscribers, and they're in some ways they're some of my best customers because
Absolutely.
they really care. They
Yeah.
they really want to make sure that their trip is going to go pretty much how they've planned it. So they're going to stay in places and on roads that they know they feel comfortable in, that they're going to have a good trip in.
Absolutely. Now, this is a paid service. So RV Weather isn't just a free app you can go to the Google store and get online.
If only.
But if someone's not ready to subscribe yet,
Yeah.
what can they get right now from RV Weather?
Yeah. So if you go to the homepage right now, you will see there is on the main menu, there's something called Daily Forecast, and it says free, just in case it's not obvious. Click on that, and every day I put out a national forecast, and it's kind of arranged by time zone: Pacific, Mountain, Central, Eastern. And I list in there all the significant weather for the next couple of days. I really base it on the National Weather Service watches, warnings, advisories. I look at the Storm Prediction Center, the Weather Prediction Center for flash floods and excessive rainfall, obviously the Hurricane Center as we get into hurricane season. And we put it all together. And it's pretty much kind of a just the facts, ma'am. If you're looking for drama and clickbait and people like waving their arms up and down and dramatic stuff, you'll probably want to find another app because I don't do that. I can't do that. I'm sorry. But if you're just looking for, hey, where's the snow? Like yesterday, we still had winter storm warnings in the Sierra. So like above six, and it's just a bullet. It's like above 6,500 feet, winter storm warnings, Donner Pass affected, 7 to 10 inches additional snow. So, okay, well, I probably don't want to be going over there right now, and so on. And we talk about the winds and flooding and where the severe weather is. That's free. And as long as I have anything to do with RV weather, that will stay free. There's no sign up needed. We used to have a daily email. We may start that up again. We've been going through some just internal stuff, but that's out on the website. updated every day. If you click through there, and you'll also see that we have graphics that are updated really continuously. And they're National Weather Service graphics, or graphics based on Weather Service models, all the way from very simple sort of graphical depictions. It's broad area, but you can look at, where's it raining, potential for severe weather, all this sort of thing. If you go through the weather for the next 7 days graphic, you'll actually see high resolution animations out to 2 days. And they include some things you don't always find on other weather apps, like a 2-day animation of hail size. So you can really get a
Wow.
pretty good indication of where the hail size is. A 2-day hourly animation of wildfire smoke and density. So if you're either very sensitive, or if you're going out west to see the view and pick your park, and you can see that smoke is coming down from wherever, you either know you need to get there before the smoke shows up, or it's going to be maybe a day or 2 or 3 before that smoke clears. So you
Well,
can
and
use
people
that
don't realize
for
what
people
smoke
with
does with
respiratory
weather.
issues.
They just don't know. I remember I did the FMCA, now FRVA rally out in Redmond, Oregon several years ago, and I flew in, and just the weather from that smoke, the winds, how much higher they were because of the heat and the temperatures, and all of that's impacted. So, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. I say that all the time. RV weather is that tool that you can know what's going on a regular basis, because it is that good. And I don't just say that. I mean, like, it's one of those things that we don't even talk about, stuff like that. And I tell people at rallies all the time about RV weather, because you've spent nearly 50 years reading the atmosphere. You've kept Navy
Too
ships
long.
safe, from typhoons. You're 12 years old, I know, but you forecasted from almost every corner of the globe. So now you're doing it for the RV community. For RVers that just want to get from point A to point B and their family home and back, what does the RV community mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've found it really to be fascinating to be part of the RV community. And and you just find people from so many different walks of life. I mean, it's really a cross section of society. I mean, there's no RV gene. I think in general, we're probably a little bit more adventurous. People have done this, they know I don't want to say it's an element of danger, but there's an element of uncertainty. I mean, right? The saying is, what, RVing is nothing more than fixing things in beautiful places. So all we're doing is, we're all out there kind of learning.
I don't think I've
We
ever
all
heard that. That's awesome.
Oh, really? Yeah. We all have to deal with the unknown. I mean, there's always something that happens. It's something with your rig. It's something with the campground. It's something on the road. We all have those stories, but we all know, I mean, and if you don't know that you're going to get, deal with those things, you figure it out really quickly. And the fact that, you didn't sell your rig after the first 30 days means, okay, we can deal with this. So it, in some ways it sort of keeps you young, right? Because you're always having to think. You're always solving new problems. But the upside is you get to see huge amounts of this country. You get to go places that are enjoyable to you. You get to connect with friends who maybe you haven't seen for a long time, or family. You can go visit them, especially if they have a long, flat driveway. Those are the best kind of families to have. Tell my relatives that's the kind of, I don't care what your house is. I just need you to have a long, flat driveway.
I love that.
They scratch their heads. Yeah, I think it's really, really a fascinating segment, if you will, or slice of American society. And then within that, I mean, we've got a full spectrum of people within that slice.
Absolutely. So from keeping Airstream friends safe in a storm to something now that serves thousands of people across the millions of miles, you're building a legacy. You may not have planned to do it that way, but it's really what it's turning into. So let's talk about how our listeners can find you.
Yeah, so you go to rvweather.com. I mean, we sometimes refer to it as an app, but we're actually not an app in the sense that you do not find us in the Apple Store or the Google Store. As long as you have internet access, and it can run, on a phone, it can run on a tablet, it can run on a laptop, type in rvweather.com, and the software is smart enough to, I guess the geeky term is responsive. So it knows, like, what kind of screen you have. You can go there. You can check out the free stuff, as we've talked about. If you decide you would like to try the routing system, We actually have right now, we've got a 2-day free trial. You can just sort of get a little taste of it for free. All you got to do is you put in an email address, you make up a password, and boom, you're in for 2 days. If you decide, well, okay, maybe this is okay, you can then try, like, for 99 cents, you can try it out for a week.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, for 99 cents, you can do it. So 2 days you can do free, then you can do like a week for 99 cents. So play with it, and you'll get a couple emails, of course, kind of tell you, I've got some videos on how to do this. We've got a user's guide. We go through some of the benefits, if you will, of using this. And then really there are two main subscriptions. We'll either do $99 for a full year, unlimited access, or you can do a month to month for $19.99, typically $20 a month. The thing with the monthly, though, it's very similar to YouTube TV or to Starlink. You can pause it. So
Oh, that's
let's
nice
say
too.
you're a snowbird. Let's say you're a snowbird. You go down right after Christmas and you come back in, I don't know, April. So you can turn this on, let's say a week before you're heading down, let's say from Indiana to Florida. And it's going to be a 4-day trip or a 5-day trip. Turn it on a week before, get down, get settled, and pause it. And then you do not get charged that subsequent months until, let's say, it's time to come home. Now I'm not worrying about snow. Now I'm worrying about severe weather. Turn it back on, get yourself back up to wherever you are up north there. And again, you can turn it off. I do have people that use this just for their private vehicles. For their personal stuff. People ask me, well, my partner or my wife or my husband, he navigates, I drive. It's like, as long as you like your partner enough that you can share an email and a password, that's fine. I'm not Netflix. I'm not the police in counting how many people are using it. I know people use it to help their daughters or their sons get across country. They're in college or just out of college, and
Or
it's
in the
their first big
military.
trip. Yeah, military. That's all fine. So that's basically sort of the business aspect of how this works. There is a 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. You'll sometimes see on social media or at rallies. I'll run specials like any other business does. But as I said, there's a 30-day money back guarantee for anybody who it's like, hey, I thought it was going to do X and I don't get that. And that's fine. You tried it out. But there's really no risk to trying it out.
That's fantastic. So rvweather.com, start the free trial, get the 99 cents thing, because, that just makes sense. Like, that's 9 days for 99 cents. Honestly, that's like a no-brainer. It costs you so little. And then even an annual plan makes sense to me at $99. It's very affordable. You don't need it till you need it, but it's nice to have when you do. The monthly, that's a great way to do it if you're just a seasonal traveler. If you're out there for summer travels, which is happening right now, and you're going to the campground every weekend and the campground's 100 miles away, you need to know the weather on the way there. It's less than $10 a month when you do it for the year, though. So the savings is bigger if you go bigger that way. You've got what, like over 5,000 trips processed already? Or is it way more than that now?
I should have looked at that. I think we're now at 12,000.
Oh, nice. So, that's how many millions of miles?
14 million miles?
Yeah.
We have done about 14 million miles. I think I should have those numbers up. I keep looking to my screen, but I don't have these up.
Well, but that's not a product pitch. That's actually a track record. And so if you're running a service business like ours, this tool is a great tool to have in your toolbox for yourself, your home office, your team, especially if you're outside in the weather. If you're, even if you're out there and you're a truck driver, this is a great tool to have, so you know what's going on.
And we do certainly have some independent truck drivers as subscribers.
Yeah. And the accuracy on it will change how you make decisions. It changed how we told the guys to schedule across the country. Thanks for coming on, Dave. We really appreciate you. All of the links will be in our show notes, so make sure you look down. Don't forget to subscribe and Learn to RV the podcast. And go over to Dave's channel and do the same thing, because he's got some fantastic stuff happening over there and he's just getting started. So that's a wrap on this Beyond the Brand of Learn to RV the podcast. Learn it before you need it.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll see you at the next campfire or the next rally.